You know how to book flights and hotels. All you're missing is a tool to plan the travel experiences you'll have once you arrive. That's why you need Viator. Book guided tours, excursions, and more in one place. There are over 300,000 travel experiences to choose from, so you can find something for everyone. And Viator offers free cancellation and 24/7 customer support for worry-free travel. Download the Viator app now and use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. Find travel experiences for you. Do more with Viator.
Swimsuit? Check. Sunscreen? Check. Phone charger? Check. Don't forget to pack the 5-Hour Energy. It fits great in a pocket or carry-on, and the alert feeling will help you arrive ready for anything. Now get 20% off when you use code 5HETRAVEL at 5hourenergy.com. Expires April 30th. One-time use only. Not valid with other discounts. Remember, visit 5hourenergy.com and use code 5HETRAVEL to save 20%.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Comedy Album Book Club. This is Matt, and if you've been following our website, you'll have seen that we had the opportunity to attend the JFL42 Festival here in Toronto over the last 2 weeks of September. In our last 2 episodes, we spoke with Shanti Marostica, who went on to win the Canadian Top Comic Contest presented by SiriusXM. But that wasn't our only JFL42 guest. During her stay in the city, Jackie Kashian took some time to sit down with us and chat about comedy. Sorry if the audio quality isn't the best. We recorded this in the lobby of the hotel meeting space, but the conversation is well worth the listen. We talk about the world of comedy, her own projects, and geek out a bit about our various nerddoms. So, thanks for listening and enjoy the episode. Okay, so welcome to Toronto. So you're with Jackie Kashian. I've actually seen you a couple of times perform.
Nice.
Here in Toronto.
I did the comedy bar for Atlas with a bunch of people, so super fun.
Yeah, and I saw you opening for Maria last time she was here as well, which was a good show. You're in a different space this time. You're in the Winter Garden.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. It's not if I'm with Maria or Brian Regan or whoever, what fancy, awesome human being that I get to open for. Mm-hmm. It's a goddamn delight. But I don't know shit about it because I don't have a horse in that race. I'm just along for the ride. So I don't know where it is usually, and I'm just like, what am I doing? And then they're fancy people. They have people. Mm-hmm. I just do stand up. So I just get in the car. Right?
It keeps life, uncomplicated.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's but if you want to know about Maria, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah,
so it's where she's at.
Yeah.
All I know is I've come to Toronto.
It's a nice space. It's got like lots of greenery, oddly enough.
Winter Garden is what you said it was called?
Yes, yeah. It's
all right.
Very big old theater.
No snow?
No snow. No.
Okay.
It'd be interesting if they decorated with snow theme kind of thing. It's like 2 stories. There's a theater on the bottom and a theater on the top.
Okay.
So, yeah. So one of the things we like to sort of ask everybody is, what's your favorite comedy album?
Oh.
I know that can be a lot like, choosing what your mood is for the day.
Except for that, I never listened to comedy albums.
No.
When I saw the name of your podcast, I was like, was I supposed to do some research?
No, and that's
okay.
Our last guest, Shanti, they don't listen to comedy albums either. So
right, I wasn't raised listening to comedy albums. I've never seen. People are very shocked that I've never saw like any Bill Cosby specials or tapes or CDs or anything. But I saw him live like 6 or 7 years ago, before the kerfluffle.
Yeah,
for the big reveal.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the same tour that I saw him on. Yeah,
I saw him at a county fair, and then I saw him at an Indian casino, because my husband was a big fan, and I was like, okay, I'll go. I mean, this guy's supposed to be genius level, amazing comic, and I saw him, and one of the greatest things about seeing Bill Cosby live was realizing that he's just a comic. He's a really good comic. Seems like a terrible person.
Yes.
But as a comic, it seems is that it didn't feel. I'm sure he's done genius level stuff.
Yeah.
Because he seemed incredibly good at it, but not. I wasn't kind of blown away.
Yeah. Well, that was I grew up.
I was just reassured that he was so good because everyone loves him so.
Yeah, I grew up listening to. My dad had his Fat Albert stuff as a kid, so I was like, oh,
I remember that TV show. I never even got the TV. Did you?
I watched the TV show as a kid, and that got me into the albums, like Fat Albert and the Gang albums and stuff. And when I was like, oh, this is a guy who's, and it was like I loved his stuff growing up, and so I was like, I got to see this. I don't know how many more opportunities, but then when I saw it, it's just like, it was
good.
He's crafting really jokes, but it's just like,
and the two times I saw him, there was 2 years in between. He had written a new hour. He redid one joke, and it was great. It was, it's sort of like, you see. We're in a weird place in stand-up right now, just because there's there's a weird. I mean, we're in a weird place in the world, of course, where everyone's because of the internet, and it's sort of come to the fore of it's everyone has it in their pockets and they're constantly online. Is that the reveals of what I used to just tell friends and women I knew. Yeah. Hey, there's a dirtbag behind me. You're going to want to avoid that guy. Now we say it on the internet, and more, so you can more and more people. And it feels like there's guys who are like, in many ways, it's amazing because there's a lot of guys who are decent. They're clearly good, decent men who are like, no, I get it. No, women, there's been sexism. It's sort of like me with, and I talk about this on stage a little bit, is that it's sort of like me with racism, where I was like, no, I get it. No, I've always known that there was racism. That sucks. I don't approve. I'm angry. Yeah. And then the iPhone camera was invented. And I was like, Jesus H. Christ. What is happening every day to absolutely everyone, at least once? There's with the chitter, and so like the best dudes in the world are like, what's happening? No, I knew that there was something happening. But what's happening to everyone? Like an 11-year-old girl wearing her brother's shirt is just as likely to get hurt as an old woman or a woman wearing no clothes or a woman wearing possibly too many clothes. So I mean, it's a free-for-all, and so the learning curve is very steep.
It's just the clarity that these videos, any decent human being, it's like somebody says, I've been getting harassed and getting catcalled. You believe them. You just take their word up. But a lot of people are like, no, they're exaggerating. It's like, there's no incontrovertible truth.
Right. But the thing is, and even if you were like I've always been, I was just like, no, I get it. And then you see video of some,
it's like, wow,
just hashtag nightmare, making somebody's life terrible because they have more melanin. Yeah. You're like, oh shit. And so, I mean, I'm willing to learn, and I think that it's exhausting. Yeah. And but if I think about it, sometimes I'm like, I'm exhausted. But how exhausting has it been to be black for 500 years? It's been pretty exhausting. Yeah. Why don't I pick up some slack? And so it's fine. But anyway, other than that, I've only heard comedy albums. I've heard a lot of new comedy albums. People give me their comedy albums and all. I've heard them. I heard a great one not long ago. Jared Logan. Do you know Jared Logan?
No.
He is originally from North Carolina. He writes for one of the late night But-It shows with the panels. Everyone's very famous. I don't know any of their names. So I forget which one he writes for. But he's great. We play Dungeons and Dragons sometimes. Awesome. So, and board games. But he is a wonderful comic in the way that I listened to his album and I was like, because the whole thing about it, and I'm sure you have an entire podcast about it, is that if it's like listening, and I'm sure people think this about bands as well. Me to speak about music is, of course, ironically very funny because I don't know anything about it. But I know that with albums, you get a real sense of the whole person. Like with bands, I'm sure you get a sense of the whole band.
Yeah.
But with comedy, you really do learn who's inside there, you know? I mean, you can tell me you're doing a character, but are you wearing a hat? No, I don't know. That's always my question. Are you wearing a hat? And my second question is there's a dirtbag inside of you that wants to do those jokes. Yeah. Stop it.
It's got to come from somewhere.
It comes from somewhere, and there's part of you that thinks that that's funny. Yeah. And I know because in my opinion, if you want to reveal racism, or if you want to reveal monsterism of any kind, whatever you want to talk about, pretending to be in favor of it is not a great angle. Yeah. It has been done, and I have laughed at it. Sarah Silverman and Zach Galifianakis are perfect examples of sort of, I mean, it's essentially... They did ironic racism. Yeah. They revealed racism within a character situation, and it was done well. And I laughed at it. It also gave birth to a whole ton of humans who were not 15 years into the game. Yeah. And tried to do it right out the gate, and it's a learned skill and nuance and subtlety.
We just did actually Sarah Silverman's Jesus is Magic.
Okay,
that was our last album that we did a panel on, and that was sort of the observation. Is like, this is obviously an ally. Mm-hmm. They're obviously a queer ally. They're obviously an ally to people of color, and I get where they're trying to go. But, 15, 20 years on, it does not land.
And it does not hold up.
It does not land.
Right.
And she actually did, on I Love You America, she did an episode talking about that just recently. Like, it was titled, I think, My Racist Past or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, she's clearly aware of it. And it's
right. She's a self-aware human who's willing to take responsibility for her own actions.
And you find that the comedy world, because... in entertainment in general, there's this lip service to diversity and giving people voices often. It's like, and a lot of people who are women or people of color or in the LGBTQ plus community saying, people say that, but there's still a lot of hostility. Do you find it's changing on the ground? Do you find there's actually progress in the types of material that people are doing and the types of space, the way spaces are behaving?
Well, I mean, the weird thing about the rise of how big stand-up is right now, and it's sort of like with how big the internet is that, in my opinion, the internet was created so that I could find more people who want to discuss at length the Silmarillion. It was not created, in my opinion, for Nazis to find each other. Yeah. Sadly, that has been my product. Give it back! Yeah. And I wanted to, and so... There's a lot of very specific places that people could go and do stand-up comedy. Yes. So a lot of the mainstream clubs still don't book enough women, still don't book enough people of color. They've picked up what I have noticed, and this is completely without a lot of numbers or anything, because they usually here's the ratio. There's 5 people on the show at a club in Los Angeles or California. Mm-hmm. Or Los Angeles or New York. And 3 or 4 of them will be men. One of those men will be a person of color. The other, there'll be at least 3 white guys, straight, walking around, worried that they're not getting enough.
Decades of getting every gig wasn't enough.
Right. 300 years of being a pretty sweet ride, guys. Anyway, and then there'll be 1 woman, and then there'll be 1 person of color. If they have a person of color who is a woman, they will often have 4 straight white guys. Yeah. And I have seen some posters lately that made me go, "Oh, you guys, try." Yeah. And it is some effort. I mean, I do a podcast called The Door Chorus.
Yes.
And I do a podcast about stand-up as well. But the one about The Door Chorus, it has always leaned heavy to straight white guys. Yeah. Partially because booking anything is a pain in the ass, and nobody is a squeakier fucking wheel than straight white guys. Yeah. They've been trained up in it. They know to ask for things. They know to send out avails. They know to go, what about now? And the rest of us are sitting around going, well, I don't want to. I already asked. I don't want to push.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, please push. Because, not this 2018, I've actively tried to book my own show. Mm-hmm. And even I, Jackie Kashian, ally and friend of the people, first of all, it isn't harder. It's only harder because I don't have to, I'm not just sitting there fielding answers.
So you mentioned your podcast, so it's Dork Forest and the Jackie and Laurie show.
Yeah.
So have you found that podcasting has really helped with the stand-up world? Because it seems like every
comic in the world.
Comic in the world, yeah.
Yeah. They're like pets. You should never have more than two. Two for one person. The Dork Forest, I've been doing that. This is the 12th year. So I got in early, ground floor of a non-money-making endeavor. And then Jackie and Laurie is 2 years in. Mm-hmm. And it's... the Dork Forest has definitely... It's just nice because people who listen to the Dork Forest, because the whole premise of the Dork Forest is someone is enthusiastic about something that they like a lot, and it can be anything. Like this week, it is. I'm going to say it wrong, so I'm going to go with it's a Japanese toy that this comic Jason Van Glass, love and he loves. When they came over to North America, they were sold as Muscle.
Yeah.
MUSCLE, which stood for miniatures in limited editions. There's many other words. I don't remember the whole thing about it, but it's classic. I mean, there's I had a guy come on and talk about Speed Racer. That was a great episode. The Oregon Trail. I had an episode about bees. Bees was awesome. I have 2 episodes about bees, 6 years apart, because beekeepers. Yeah.
Well, lots have changed for bees in those 6 years.
Oh,
so
yeah. And bees are busy. And that's the thing. It's usually just a celebration of what people like a lot or what they know about a lot. And sometimes, I'm doing a live one here at the Just for Laughs, and it's with Ryan Hamilton, who's one of the new younger guys who's just blown up and is amazing. Yeah. And a Canadian comic named Courtney Gilmore.
Yes.
Who I saw when I was here probably 2 years ago at that comedy bar gig. She opened for me there, and she was the light.
Yeah.
And so they'll be my 2. And Courtney was like, I like diners. Is that a thing? And Ryan said, I like shoes a lot. And I said, those are topics that can cover an hour very easily.
For sure.
So, but what I was saying about the audience is that because the topics are just positive, what people like, and it's the safest space in the world. So I don't slam whatever you like. I just go, what is that like to like that? And then we talk about it. But people, they're incredibly supportive. They come out to shows, and there's more and more of them every day. Because I don't have, it's not like murder. Yeah. So the murder podcast, My Favorite Murder is amazing. Those 2 women are hilarious.
Yes.
But they're also talking about murder, and people love murder. Yeah. So Dork Forest, it didn't blow up like that, but it's a slow and steady build, and the Rangers, the fans are outstanding. So it's kind of a delight. Jackie and Laurie has, weirdly enough, kind of blown up among young comics. Mm-hmm. Because Laurie Kilmartin and I talk about stand-up comedy. That's all it is. There's a whole slew of podcasts where middle-aged white guys talk about stand-up comedy. There are very few middle-aged white ladies talking about stand-up comedy. So we have, I don't know that it's a step forward, but it's a lateral move at the very least, and something. And so people come out from that too. It's pretty amazing because that one's blown up. It's sort of the same. It might be the same numbers as the Dork Forest, and it's only been around for 2 years.
You find, one of my dorkdoms is comedy. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this podcast with my friend. I came to it at a very inappropriately young age. My mom was a nurse who worked nights. My dad was always away on business trips. Mm-hmm. And so we had a nanny. It was the 80s. I'd sneak down on Saturday nights and watch Saturday Night Live when I was like 7 or 8 years old.
Wow.
It was just like, this is the Eddie Murphy years. I mean, that's like totally incorrect viewing for a child of that age. But a couple of years later, that led to like Monty Python and, Benny Hill, which again, even 10, 11, 12.
Holding up.
Yeah.
I remember when I was 11 and I saw Benny Hill and I was like, oh, this is not for me.
No.
And,
but it's interesting because it's like right when Fox came around, that was a big chunk of their late night programming. I'm like, that explains so much about the Fox network that one of the earliest things they got the rights to was Benny Hill. And now I'm like, I can't watch that. I can't go back.
I'm sure there's some because I remember watching it because everybody liked it so much and thinking, what am I missing? And I'll say that somebody else said this, which is hilarious, but it resonated in me, is that I was trained from a very early age to find things funny that weren't made for me. Yeah. That were like, tits and ass are funny. They're funny. And you're like, okay, where is it? How can I... And so I would find a way that things that were very sort of masculine and male-dominated... I've always looked for that perspective and gone, okay, that's funny. Wherein, like, and I was told from a very early time in stand-up comedy that women don't swear, women don't talk about their bodily functions at all, because nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear a woman swear. Nobody wants to hear a dirty woman, and all these things. And I was like, and it was, those things stick with me. I swear pretty much like a sailor sometimes, but there's no. It's weird that male comics weren't trained in the same way to try to find comedy in sort of the female, the woman's experience. And Kilmartin talks about this a fair amount on the podcast. She was like, whenever she goes on stage, she'll see women in the audience just go, oh, there's a woman. I'm going to hear, it's probably not going to be a goddamn nightmare that I'm going to have to try to find something funny in.
Yeah. Growing up, I actually gravitate more towards women comics as like the comedians that I really enjoy the most. I mean, I like comedians of any...
Well, you would love me because I have both that, I've come up in that masculine thing, but I am a woman, so I can't not be a woman.
Yeah.
And so I genuinely... People are, that question. It's like, are you funny? And would you?
When you ask a male comic, like, fuck off.
No, they do. They do ask. I mean, it's just they always ask comics, are you funny? And I always say, of course, I'm hilarious. And then I'm like, I am the golden retriever of stand-up comedy. The very few people don't like me, because I have both that sort of. Because the reason you gravitated towards women comics is probably because you're like, oh, it's still funny, but it's a different perspective.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's not that there aren't hilarious men. Some of my very favorite comics are, have you seen any Stuart Lee stuff?
No.
He's a British comic, and I worked with him a bunch of weeks over in Australia many years ago. But he now has a TV show, and he was always like the outsider guy. And not this last special, but the one before, I remember watching it going, I don't think he realizes that he's now a muckety muck. Like, he's kind of a big deal now.
Yeah.
But he is awesome. He's essentially like if, the best way to describe him, Stuart Lee, is he's like if Bill Hicks and Andy Kindler were one guy.
That's an interesting combination.
It's a crazy-ass conversation. It's a weird combination. Yeah. And it is... And no one can do it. No. I mean, you can't even picture it till you see it. And then you're like, I sort of see what she... I mean, some people don't see that, but that's what I see when I see him. So I love him. I love any number of people. But Greg Proops is one of my favorite comics, and Dana Gould, and all those guys from San Francisco up in the Bay Area from the early to mid '90s, Patton Oswalt and Blake Apache and Brad Posehn, and and they're all very different from each other as well. Matt Weinhold, and it's but there's nothing more fun than watching a comic that you can't not watch.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, and then there's great comics that I've always, like, you're like, well, that guy's really, really funny, but he's a disaster to be around. You know, I can't, like, you're like, he's either hammered all the time, or he's gross, or he's got some other issue. No, those are the two. Yeah, I mean, it's like there's guys that are funny, but if they're high or they have only, like, offstage conversation is drugs, where they're getting them, what drugs they're on, what drugs they just did.
Yeah.
That's exhausting.
It got boring in high school. I can't imagine, like, being an adult and talking about that stuff.
We're all exhausted now.
Yeah.
Can we not? Anyway, so, and then of course there's the sexual disasters, which is every day's a brave new reveal of someone going, you know what the hell, my career. Because the thing is you gum up. Do you ever read Upton Sinclair's The Jungle?
Yes.
I haven't read it in decades, but I read it again. Like, I read it in high school, and then I read it again, like, probably 10 years after. And I haven't read it again because it's sad. So, but it was one of those books that just stays with you, you know? And hence the reason it's a classic. But in the first half of the book, you'll remember, he's a very powerful guy. He's an immigrant, but he's a big, strong guy, and he gets lots and lots of work. So he has no problem believing that the merit system works. Because he's a big, strong guy who works really hard, and he gets lots of stuff. And then he gets sick on the job because of the job. He gets hurt. It takes him months to recover. He's emaciated. And then he goes back and he stands in the crowd to get picked again, and because it's laborer stuff. And he doesn't get picked, and he doesn't get picked because he isn't the big strong guy that he used to be. They're still picking the big strong guy, and there's no safety net. So, when I was a young woman comic. I thought to myself, well, it's the merit system is real, you know, because I had all the energy in the world. I've always been a relatively cheerful, optimistic person, and I was getting some work. I was stalling at feature, and then when I stalled at feature for too long, I remember thinking to myself, what am I doing wrong? You know, am I too fat? Am I too outspoken? Am I not outspoken enough? Am I not working hard enough? And I meet those young women now, and I want to go, yes, you are correct. In many ways it is a merit system. But there will be a wall that they won't let you past. And that's the wall that everybody's fighting right now, of course. Yeah. It has been forever. But and there's chips in it. It's fine. And there's always progress, but it's always funny to me that people say, well, there's been so much progress. And you're like, yes, like Chinese water torture, though. Like drip, drip, drip over the last 150 years. So if you're a woman comic, and this is still true. When I started, there weren't as many women comics, but there was pressure to book women comics. So you'd get an MC gig pretty quick. Okay. And once you had more than enough time to close, you would feature, and you'd move up kind of quick. Once you could close, you were just kept at feature, because they're like, well, I've had more than one booker and club owner tell me that nobody wants to see a woman close. They don't want to see a woman headliner. They want a guy to close. It's going to be, because he's more powerful. And you're like, well, I'm going to murder you in my dreams. And and that still happens where the stalling happens. And it's not fair, but it doesn't matter if it's fair or not. All you have to do is just keep working at it. And but the people who say that doesn't happen still it's a naivete that comes from strength. Yeah. It comes from sort of a feeling of invincibility for being 28 years old. Yeah. And being willing to work 60 hours a week and do stand-up for 30, you know? And I've been there, so I get it. And I'm sympathetic, but not supportive.
Yeah. So sooner or later, they're gonna hit that wall, and they'll realize.
And the wall moves. The wall moves.
It is, through hard work, like what you're doing.
Well, what everybody's done, what everybody before me's done. Like I was just, I saw this. Did you ever see Dick Van Dyke Show? Right?
Oh yeah, I loved it.
So Rosemarie was really the only example I had as a kid of a funny woman writer. Mm-hmm. She was a writer on that show. Yeah. She was not married. That was her job. She made jokes about liking boys, but she, didn't worry about it. And she was treated well. And and I just saw a documentary that was on like Me TV, like one of those, like a UHF kind of situation, it's called Wait for Your Laugh. And I bought it on Amazon because I'm like, I need to watch this like 9 times. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, was a star as a baby. She was like a 4-year-old who could sing.
Oh, wow.
With the voice of like a 40-year-old. And so she was super famous on the radio in the 20s. And then in the 30s, she grew up and had a great voice and sang and sang and sang. And then moved out to Los Angeles and did the Dick Van Dyke Show. Her husband died, very sad. She wore that black bow in her hair forever. That was in the documentary. Aww. And then she did the Hollywood Squares or whatever the hell for the next 15 years, and then she died. But it was just a fascinating. It's a great documentary. Is all I'm saying. So, and if you like a comedy album, you might enjoy a 1-hour comedy documentary
for sure.
About Rosemarie.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned, shifting gears a bit, you mentioned Dungeons & Dragons and board games. Do you find that aside from giving you material, do you find that those dorkiness elements, like Dungeons & Dragons is sort of like a primer in life skills in a lot of ways?
You know what? I never even knew that, but that's everybody who's played it since they were 13. It's like, you get to do like the Kessel Run over and over and over again, but not for real. You get to work on social skills in a fictional environment so you can do things once you're talking to people who you aren't gaming with. Yeah. And I was like, what is it? Because I never knew what it was before I played it. I thought it was live action role playing.
Yeah.
I thought it was dress up, throw beanbags at each other, and which is a viable, different game.
For sure.
And but this is essentially a board game that one person has created a scenario from the books, and then three to 5 other people all come up with characters that can have as many or as little traits as you want it to be. And I just played. You familiar with the Double Clicks?
I've heard of them.
Do you know Garfunkel and Oates?
Yes.
Okay, so the Double Clicks. I'm sure neither of those two duos want to be compared to each other, or maybe they do. Garfunkel and Oates, of course, those two ladies are. Those two young women sing awesome songs. Mm-hmm. One plays ukulele, the other one, I think. Guitar. Yeah, they both play guitars, essentially. So the Double Clicks, Aubrey plays the cello, and Laser, who's Angela Weber, Laser Weber, she plays the keyboards, and they come up with funny songs. Sometimes about social stuff, sometimes dick jokes. And it's essentially
the entire gamut.
The whole gamut. And so I played, it was Laser's husband who ran the game. Mm-hmm. I played a fighter dude named Gaston Mansplain. And the funnest thing is, like, I've only played, like, I've played probably in 5 games in the last 15 years, which is as long as I've known my husband, which is who I've started playing with. And it's a fascinating game. I mean, I don't know how you would start playing if you didn't have a native Sherpa. Yeah. I could probably DM a game. I could dungeon master or game master a game now. Yeah. 15 years later. But at the beginning, I would and luckily I played with Andy, my husband, and 3 or 4 other guys who had been playing since they were 13. Yeah. And a couple of them have swallowed all of the books.
I've been playing since I was about that age myself, and it's I don't have that rule retention. I'm much more of the. I wanted it to be an improviser. I wanted it to be funny, so I was like, I'm much more into the role playing aspect, and then I like lean on the other people for. Okay, this is what I got to roll.
Right. What are the charts? I played Champions for a while, which is a superhero kind of game. And my husband actually, he made a free superhero RPG. He's a game designer.
Yeah.
So, that if you want to go and download character sheets and play that game, it's amazing. It's called The Hero Instant. And it's, and the reason he made it was because I hate making characters, because it's fiddly.
Yeah.
And he said, you could make a character, I'm going to make a game where you can make a character in less than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then he did. And then he put it up on the internet. And it's in beta, but it's free. And so go to the Hero Instant and look at the rules and look at the character sheets and knock yourselves out. I was Firebike Mike, Michelle on a motorbike who could control fire. And because you could be whatever you want,
for sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so I've never had great social skills. I'm very sad that I was not introduced to D&D until I was in my late 30s. Because it would have been great. Because the thing I hid in junior high was books. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just like, how do they do things? He's got a dog. And that's how he deals with it. So.
And you're a big fan of Tolkien?
Yeah. It's which I also did not read until college.
Yeah. I had to take a couple of passes at that.
It takes a while.
I loved The Hobbit, read it in grade 4. Just devoured it. Because I was like, read it in the order chronologically. And it's just such an accessible book.
Right, well, if you're 9 or 10 years old, you should be able to either read it yourself or get it read to you and thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, but then I was like, I'm going to launch straight into the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I'm like, oh no. I got through the first book, got partway through the second, I'm like, I can't do this. And then in my 20s, I came around and gave it again. And I'm like, okay, now this is getting past the wall. I understand what he's doing with language.
Right, and I read it, I was probably 18, and one of my brothers, he's always been the guy that's turned me on to fiction, like sort of science fiction and fantasy and stuff like that. And he's always been a big reader. It was my brother Phil is a huge influence on me, and so I lived with him and his wife one summer in between college, right? It was in between freshman and sophomore year. And he was like, you have got to try The Hobbit. Yeah. And so I read The Hobbit, and I fucking loved it. Yeah. And then, but I was 19, right? 18, 19 years old, so I read The Lord of the Rings. And he's like, you want to try the Silmarillion? I was like, yes, and I could not. Because it's like reading the Bible.
Yeah.
So
it is literally like reading the Bible.
Yeah, it's who begat who, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I took a class that next semester, which would have been like 84, was the first year that they offered this thing. It was a class on Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and Charles Williams, one of the other Inklings. And that, I had to read the Silmarillion for that. And reading the Silmarillion assisted is the way to go. There's a guy named the Tolkien Professor, and the Tolkien Professor has a series of podcasts. It's almost a seminar, and they're 8 one-hour podcasts about the Silmarillion, and it is awesome. It's fascinating. It's fun.
I've always wanted to get in. I've always wanted to penetrate that book, and I just have not been able to. I'll fall asleep. I'll start reading it.
Literally, I bought it on tape. I was doing the road in the 90s on cassette tape. Fell asleep at the wheel. I was like, we're done.
That'd be like reading, having epic Nordic poetry
Odyssey?
read to you.
Yeah, it's not happening. I like the Odyssey, but there's no way I'm listening to someone read me iambic pentameter as I try to drive the rockets. Yeah. It's a terrible idea.
It's an accident waiting to happen. And you also enjoy Terry Pratchett.
Right, I do now. It took me a second. Yeah. Cage Baker is currently my favorite, I think, science fiction writer. She passed away probably 8 years ago. She was on the Dork Forest when it was a call-in show. And she was curmudgeonly and wonderful. Anyway, she has written my favorite series of hers is the Company series. She also wrote a fantasy series, which was just 3 books, which is outstanding. she had a brain tumor and just plowed through and finished all of her series. And I was like, I appreciate that. Thank you from the grave. And when I had her on the Dork Forest, Cage Baker said that she was only reading Terry Pratchett and Shakespeare. And I said, well, that doesn't sound pompous at all. And she was like, stop talking. Anyway, so I was like, why you gotta bust my chops? But she, Terry Pratchett, he loves wordplay. He loves puns. He's a goof. He should, if he wasn't, he should have been, is he alive? I forget.
He passed away recently, right? Yeah.
He should be the father of three, is what I'm saying. Yeah. It's because of the way his sense of humor runs. Yeah. But it took me several books to get into it.
Yeah.
It's cumulative.
You can't read it in chronological order. That's what I figured out. Like, I read it in chronological order, and the early books are very almost Douglas Adams-like. Yeah. And it didn't click in quite the same way for me. But then when I realized, like, the characters span all the books. You see, like, the patrician...
Recurring.
Yeah, the patrician shifted up about 3 books in and became a new character, but then he's all the way through in Sam Vimes and Carrot and all the witches all come and go.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't need to read this starting with the least likable 2 characters in the entire world.
Right.
I can start with, like, oh, I can go to the Guards, and that's a self-contained book.
And that's a great one. Yeah. Did you have you read the Dresden Files?
Yes. Yeah.
I recommend starting with book 4 because he really learns how to write right around book 4.
Yeah.
And I liked like 4 through 7. I haven't continued, but there's so many chains and stuff. It's have you read the California Bones?
No.
It's Greg Van Eekhout is his name, and it's about magic, and the magic resides in the bones of old, like, mastodons and also mythical griffins, and it's set in Los Angeles, and all the old wizards who run the town are like Disney and Mulholland. And it's like, and Sepulveda, like, literally all the guys who founded Los Angeles.
I always find those where they take history and just shift it slightly. Any story that does that.
Orson Scott Card. Yeah. And Charles DeLint, who's a Canadian author, does urban fantasy and sort of like that, where he sets it in Ottawa and all these places that I've been. And I'm like, it's the reason why I struggle watching A Handmaid's Tale. And, I mean, the TV show. Oh, any number of reasons.
There's a host of reasons. It's filmed in 2 locations, primarily. One where I grew up. Oh. The other out front of my apartment. So Little America. There's a scene where you see Little America, and it's like, that's my laundry room. Okay. That's gotta be distracting. That makes me feel uncomfortable. And then it's like, oh, that's my mother's house. Yeah. And there's dead corpses hanging from the bridge by it. Yeah. Oh, that just really resonates in an uncomfortable... Which is like, it's good that it makes you feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's like, that's extra uncomfortable. That is extra, very extra uncomfortable. And the other one is American Gods. Also filmed a big chunk in Cambridge, where I grew up. Cambridge, Ontario. Yeah, I don't watch either of those. Handmaid's Tale, because I accidentally read it when it was the only thing in England, English, that I could get my hands on when I was traveling for a month in Europe in '89. And it was terrifying and sad. Yes. And so I was like, oh, I don't need to read. I mean, it's one of those books, again, like Upton Sinclair's book, where you're like, no, that'll stay with me. I don't need to reread that. I got it. It's like, it's a Man from the High... Man on the High Castle? Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. And then American Gods, which I liked a fair amount. I didn't entirely get it when I read it as a book, and then I'm rereading it as a comic book series right now, which is actually helping. I found... I like Neil Gaiman, but his material... It never really clicked with me, but when he and Terry Pratchett combined forces in Good Omens, which they're making it with Doctor Who, not Cumberbatch. David Tennant. Oh, good. Is going to be. So I'm sick of Cumberbatch. Yeah, David Tennant. I like him. Yeah, David Tennant's going to be Crowley, and I can't remember who's going to be Azrael. But it's like they're filming. I'm like, holy crap! This is like ripped from my brain. Right. So Good Omen
is a delight.
Yeah.
And Terry Pratchett should have always written with Neil Gaiman because it tones down his somberness. And Neil Gaiman tones down his punniness.
Yes, it's just like this. It's
chocolate
funny. It's a chocolate and peanut butter situation where these two good things come together, and it's 1,000 times better than you'd think either one would be on their own.
Right? Didn't even need to be that great, and because I still would have liked it.
Yeah,
but it's really one of the best. It's one of the best. Yeah, it's great. But Cage Baker, it's about immortality and time travel, which you're talking about historical fiction. I have a hard time with historical fiction if I have if I know anything about the history. Yeah. Because it's nobody's done any research. Yeah. That's not true with the Flashman series, which is an anti-hero of epic proportions. Harry Flashman is a disaster of a human being, and he has been in every major British conflict and American and actually world conflict from 1848 to 1902. And the research on it, the guy started writing in the 50s, stopped I think in the early 70s, and they are offensive, hilarious. He is a horrible human being, Harry Flashman, who gets his comeuppance and then also gets medals and promotions and things like this, where you're like, I remember my husband gave it to me when we were dating, and I read it and I was like, why would he give me this? This is the worst guy in the world. And I got to the end of it and I was like, where's the next one? And because he does not learn. He does not learn, this guy. But he is consistently revealed to be a disaster. Yeah. Like, he's in Afghanistan in 1848. The only reason, it's a complete massacre of British troops, the only reason he lives is because he throws everyone in front of him as he runs away. And anyway, but so when the history's done right, I like it. Cage Baker does the history right in the Company series, and because it's about immortality and time travel, I started weirdly enough with the second book, which I kind of recommend. It's Sky Coyote is the second book, and the Garden of Iden is the first book, and the Garden of Iden takes place during the Spanish Inquisition, and but not bad. Okay. It isn't super graphic or anything. It's pretty light as far as the humor is super dry. It's kind of hilarious in the way you're like, oh my god, it's almost Terry Pratchett in how cumulative the dryness is. Yeah. So, Sky Coyote takes place in a Chumash Indian village also during the Spanish Inquisition, but in California. Okay. And then the one after that, I think, takes place in 1997, and because it's about time travel. Yeah. And
that's the best thing about a time travel story. You literally have all of time and sometimes space.
Right. So there's
at your
7
disposal.
Main books, and then there's easily 5 or 6 with some other novellas and stuff. Yeah. Where there's a bajillion characters recurring that come through, like Terry Pratchett. Anyway, we have digressed into discussing books.
I'll ask you one last question, so you can get ready for tonight.
Sure.
So if you had one piece of advice, you could go back in time.
Sure.
We've been talking about time travel. That's an actual segue. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you were starting comedy, what would it be?
I don't think I would, because I think I'd break it. It's, I was given a fair amount of advice, and I say that a little critically, but that's not true. I was given wonderful advice by this woman, Vanda Michalowski, who went by the name Vanda Michaels in 1984, 85, I think. And she wrote it out for me, and it's framed in my bathroom. And it's like 8 pieces of advice about stand-up comedy, but they're really 8 pieces of advice about plumbing. I mean, it's just essentially, don't compare yourself, this type of thing. Remember to have fun. Try to make things, even very basic material can be made personal. Because everyone, quite honestly, is talking about the same things. We're all talking about sex. We're all talking about marriage or relationships. We're talking about children or not children. We're all talking about our parents or not our parents. I mean, literally, there's 5 topics, and then there's politics and socio-political stuff.
Yeah.
And so people, it's the same, everyone's got the same, we're all in the same gene pool. So you have to make every joke your own. So she really gave me, in 1985 or 86, the best advice. And it's on, if you go to JackieKashian.com, which you can also find by going to FamilyPetAncestry.com, because I bought it because it made me laugh. It just goes to JackieKashian.com. If you go there in the lower right-hand corner, there's a hot link that says advice I've received, and it will be the advice I received.
Excellent.
And I would, when it was in this notebook, I taped it to the back of every notebook I had for decades. And then I framed it because I was like, hey, this is falling apart. And then I showed it to Vanda Michalowski probably 10 years ago when she moved back to, she had quit stand-up comedy and was teaching yoga to the Dixie Chicks on their world tour. And she's a yoga instructor. Mm-hmm. And she came back to do stand-up in L.A., and I met her at an open mic, and I was like, you gave me a thing. And she's like, I saw that on the internet. I don't remember writing that. And so I said, well, and I brought her the original. Mm-hmm. And she said, that is weird, because that is my handwriting. But I don't remember writing that at all. And I said, well, you were pretty coked up. It was 85, remember?
I think that's about half the comedy world in 85.
And she was 24 years old and hanging out with Sam Kinison. So there was really no way that she wasn't doing drugs.
It's kind of like a prerequisite. Oh, you're here for Sam?
Free Coke.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, and welcome to Toronto, and enjoy.
I feel welcome. What I really feel was passive aggressive. That guy
that guy was
and pick up
that pillow was being a bit of a passive aggressive.
Welcome to Canada. We don't put pillows on the floor. Yeah. Excuse me.
It's a nation that's built on passive aggression. It's our Britishness.
But it keeps you polite, and I like it.
Looks like you need a vacation. Enter the 5-Hour Energy Where Will the Tide Take You sweepstakes. You could win a $10,000 dream beach vacation. Imagine jet setting off to a tropical paradise, having fun in the sun, or diving at a gorgeous reef. It's up to you. No purchase necessary. Go to 5HETide.com for official rules and to enter. That's 5HETide.com. Enter today. Ends June 30th, 2024.
It's time for another season of The Palmetto Porch, an original podcast from Discover South Carolina. I'm Devin Whitmire. Join me as I get to the heart of what makes South Carolina such a great place to visit by speaking to the locals who make it so special. Premiering December 5th, find The Palmetto Porch wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information about our show, visit scpalmettoporch.com.